The forgotten trailhead in Utah breathes like a living thing, and those who enter never leave the same. You're listening to ASMR 404Found. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Do you ever hear about a trailhead that breathes? It sounds crazy. But if you hike long enough, especially in the backcountry ranges, nobody dares mark with official signage anymore. You'll hear stories, not from locals, most of them won't say a damn thing, but from maps that were redacted, from trip reports that vanished, and from hikers who didn't come back, except in pieces. I used to be a park ranger in Utah, 10 years. I worked the high elevation zone between Bryce Canyon and Zion, a region people usually call Echo Ridge, though that's not any official term, not on paper anyway. But back in 2018, before I quit everything and swore off wilderness for good, I saw something, felt something, and I lost for people, a whole hiking group. 3 tourists and a volunteer named Eli. None of them were ever recovered, and I believe I know why. We were near what old maps label as Devil's Gate Trailheader, barely marked. No moved access point to Echo Ridge, hidden by dry brush and a collapsing wooden sign covered in owl droppings. The last time it was considered active was sometime in the 1960s. The trail doesn't appear on any hiking app. The Forest Service officially decommissioned it, but it's still there, and something's still inside it. It started with a call to dispatch. A group of backpackers, 2 sisters, a guy named Ben, and their guide Eli had gone radio silent on day 2 of their scheduled hike. Not a panic situation, but enough to raise eyebrows. The last check-in had come from a sat phone near Devil's Gate. Then, nothing. No GPS pings, no SOS calls. I was told to investigate alone. I had experience in this zone and had been down to Devil's Gate once before, years prior. The area gives off a strange quiet, even in daylight. You know how the desert sometimes feels. To still, this was worse. Like the land was listening to you. I hiked in at 5 a.m. and planned to reach their intended campsite by sundown. My pack was light, just water, flare, medical kit, and a service pistol standard for rescues. I didn't expect to need it. I kept repeating that to myself. When I passed through the narrow gap between 2 massive stone arches that marked the beginning of Devil's Gate, I felt it like stepping through a pressure seam in the air. My ears popped. The sky didn't change, but it looked ... duller, less alive. The first mile of the trail narrowed fast. Thick pines on either side, but twisted, like they grew under tension. No wildlife sounds. Even the wind moved differently. You know how branches usually sway with a breeze. Here they twitched, like something tugged them from above. Then came the first sign. A torn backpack hanging from a dead juniper. Strapped to it was a GoPro. The lens was cracked, but the device itself was still warm. I sat down against a stone ledge and pressed play. The footage started with Eli, the guide, filming himself. He looked nervous, more than nervous. Like he was forcing himself to keep calm. He whispered into the camera, "This trailhead ain't what I thought. The map's wrong. The trees moved last night. I don't mean I heard branches. I mean the path was different in the morning. I backtracked to where we pitched the tent, but it was gone. The girls, they said they saw someone watching them from the ridge, but there's no one out here. No one should be." The camera shook. A gust of wind rattled through the pines. Then darkness when the video cut back in. It was clearly hours later. Eli screamed. The image shook violently, falling sideways. A shape ran past the lens bare feet, pale and long, almost spider-like. The camera was dropped, left at a skewed angle, showing only treetops. But a voice came through. It wasn't Eli. It wasn't human. It said, "You came through the wrong door." And then, ... silence. I sat there for a long time. Something about that voice felt like it had been spoken directly into my ear, though I had headphones in. I should have turned back then, but I didn't. I pressed deeper into Devil's Gate, and things got worse. I kept moving deeper into Devil's Gate. The sun was still up, but the light didn't follow me past mile 2. It was like the trail ate it. You could look up and still see a blue sky through the pine needles, yet everything around you dimmed, like dusk had fallen just for this place. The trail bent unnaturally, taking me west instead of north. Every now and then I'd spot something out of place, like a stone stacked atop a tree stump, or a pine cone cut in half, perfectly hollowed out, man-made, intentional, maybe a warning. And then I found the first boot. It was upright, toe pointing ahead on the path. No blood, no tracks. But inside it was a foot, still wearing a sock. No bones sticking out, like it had been cleanly unzipped from the leg. I vomited. My stomach was already tight with dread, but seeing that clean, surgical, inhuman, it broke something in me. The strange thing, the boot wasn't weathered, not even dirty. It looked like it had just been set down, still warm to the touch. I radioed dispatch, but the static was so thick it sounded like someone exhaling underwater. Then a voice cut through, brief, whispery, distorted. It said, "You're too close." I didn't press the call button again. A few minutes later, I found what looked like their old campsite, though it had been torn apart. Not by animals there. Were no claw marks, no bite signs. It looked peeled, like the tent had been unraveled. The fire pit was still smoking, but the wood inside wasn't burning. The heat was coming from beneath the dirt, like the earth itself was exhaling warmth. Around the fire pit were dozens of drawings scratched into the soil. Circles, symbols, a few words written in shaky capital letters. One that caught my eye read, "The door that breathes." I took photos. My hands were trembling so badly I had to kneel just to focus the lens. My instincts were screaming at me to leave, but I kept going. About half a mile further in, the landscape changed. The trees thinned, and the dirt trail gave way to shale and dry grass. I saw formations that didn't belong, rocks arranged in spirals, bones tied together with what looked like human hair. There was something in the distance. A tall black structure, almost like a monolith, standing crooked on a ridge. It wasn't on any map, wasn't a natural feature. I decided to get closer. As I climbed the ridge, I began hearing it, a low hum, like the sound of wind passing through polo stone, but rhythmic, pulsing. It made my teeth ache, like it was vibrating through my bones. The structure was smoother up close, not stone. It looked like obsidian, but it felt soft, like skin pulled tight. There were small holes along the surface, evenly spaced, like gills. It was breathing. I reached out and placed my hand on it. A terrible mistake. The second I made contact, everything went silent. Not just around me, inside me. I couldn't hear my own heartbeat. No birds, no wind. Just a cold blankness that settled in my chest. And then it opened. The surface of the monolith split, slowly, like a mouth yawning after a long sleep. Inside, there was no darkness. There was movement. Dozens of pale limbs, some human, some not, twitching in unnatural rhythm. And eyes, so many eyes, all blinking out of sync, watching me with a hunger that wasn't just physical. It was ancient. I ran. I don't remember the descent. I remember falling, crashing through bushes, tearing my jacket on branches. My legs were bleeding, but I didn't stop until I collapsed by a dried-up creek bed that looked familiar. I must have passed out when I came to. It was night, and I wasn't alone. There were footprints around me, barefoot, long toes. The kind of prints that didn't seem to press into the dirt, but float above it, like they were made by something not fully here. I pulled out my flashlight and swept it across the creek bed. That's when I saw the girl. It was the older sister from the group. Her name was Miranda. She was naked, standing at the edge of the tree line, arms limp at her sides. Her face was wrong, off-center. Her mouth was stretched too wide, and her eyes didn't blink at the same time. But it was her. "Help me," she said. I stepped forward. "Please, help me." That's when I saw it. Her shadow wasn't connected to her feet. It moved separately, like a second person, standing just behind her, mimicking every motion a second too late. Her arms dropped. The shadow didn't it, raised its own arms, and they were long. I stepped back. She followed. The shadow stayed still. Her mouth widened into a grin that split her cheeks. Her voice dropped low, almost childlike. "You shouldn't have touched the door." I turned and ran again. This time I ran until the sun started rising. By the time I saw the old ranger station, my lips were cracked from dehydration, and every bone in my feet felt disjointed. It was barely standing an old emergency shelter built in the 60s, maybe earlier. The roof sagged. One of the shutters was broken clean off, but it was shelter. I pushed through the crooked door and fell against the inside wall. The air smelled like mildew and iron. There were scratch marks on the floorboards. Deep grooves clawed into the wood. I could see something written on the far wall in what looked like dried blood. "Don't let them smile." I barely registered it. My vision pulsed. My ears were ringing again. My brain felt like it was 2 inches too big for my skull. Then I heard humming, a child's voice, soft, melodic, coming from the crawl space beneath the floor. I pulled my flashlight. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold it. The beam lit a small square cut into the floorboards with a rusted handle. The hatch was already open. The humming stopped. I crouched down and pointed the light. Inside, there was a girl down there, not Miranda. This one was younger, blonde, wearing a ranger uniform, though it looked decades old. Faded patch on the shoulder, said McKenna. Her eyes were glassy. Her mouth hung slack. She said, "Don't smile at it." I said nothing. I just stared, unsure if I was hallucinating. She whispered again, voice trembling. "If you smile, it gets inside. That's how it learns you." Then her face twisted. Her mouth opened in an unnatural grin, stretching until the corners tore. Blood trickled down her cheeks. "I tried not to," she said, sobbing between gasps. I tried not to smile back, and then she screamed. Not from her mouth, but from every wall in the shelter. The sound seemed to come from the wood itself. I slammed the hatch shut. Outside, something heavy moved through the trees. Not walking, dragging, like bones wrapped in canvas, sliding through pine needles. I backed away from the window and turned, past the flashlight. I didn't breathe. It passed within inches of the cabin. Whatever it was, it wasn't on 2 legs. It scraped its way forward. Every few seconds, I'd hear a faint clicking sound, almost like a camera shutter. I stayed there until night fell again. That second night is when I heard the others' voices outside. Somewhere deeper in the woods, Eli's voice, calling for help. Ben's voice, Miranda, too. All of them dash begging. I knew better. I knew they were dead. But that's how it gets you. It learns your voice. It learns how to sound like you. You see, I've read about this place. After I escaped, I spent years piecing together the lore. Old texts, blacklisted maps, decommissioned trail logs. Devil's Gate isn't just a forgotten path. It's a breathing doorway. The land is alive, but not in the way we understand. It's not a forest spirit, not a god. It's a consciousness that lives between our world and whatever came before. And it eats hikers, not just their bodies, their selves, their identities, their patterns, their memories. That's why some who come back aren't really bad. Why they smile at the wrong times, blink with a delay, laugh without breath. The next morning, I finally ran again. No food, no water, no trail. I just kept heading toward the faintest glow I could find in the sky. It took me nearly 2 days to get out. When I stumbled into the ranger station near Red Hollow, I was nearly incoherent. They called it heat stroke, trauma, delirium, but they didn't go looking for the others, because the Forest Service knew. The Devil's Gate Trailhead has been off limits since 1967, after a church group vanished there. But they covered it up. claimed it was AROCKSLIDE. It wasn't. And I think they knew that I left the Rangers not long after. I tried to live normal, took a job working dispatch in Arizona, started sleeping with the lights on, didn't hike, camp, didn't go near trees, but something followed me. One night, I found a pine cone on my pillow, hollowed out, perfectly halved. Last week, I woke up to find footprints in my carpet, long toes, no heel. And tonight, as I was recording this for you, the lights flickered. My dog wouldn't come near the hallway, and I swear, heard my own voice calling from outside the window. But I live on the 14th floor. If you find this, do not go looking. Don't search for the Devil's Gate trailhead. And if you ever hear someone you know calling from the forest, don't smile, don't answer, and for the love of God, don't step through. Take a slow breath in now. Let it out. Let your shoulders drop. Let the stillness crawl in, because this is not a bedtime story. It's a confession. My name doesn't matter anymore, but if you want something to call me, use Wadium, a solo hiker, or at least I used to live for the silence of the woods, the breath between breezes, the scratch of wind through pine needles. I liked being alone where no one else goes. Now I hear trees breathe. Even when I'm inside, I see shadows. Blink, I taste fog in my sleep hand. It all started in a place called Ashpine Hollow. Won't find it on the map, no app shows the trailhead. The Park Service pretends it never existed, but the trees are still there, and they are very much awake. It started when I met a man at a hiker's coffee shack just west of Eugene. Oregon weathered jacket's 1,000-yard stare. The kind of man who looked like the forest had chewed him up and spit him out. We talked trails, Big Sur North, Cascades, Pisgah. Then he leaned in and said, "There's one place I don't talk about, one trail that follows you back Ashpine Hollow, West Virginia." Blinked. I had never heard of it, he said. That's the point, then. He rolled up his sleeve and showed me a tattoo on his forearm to pine trees and an eye between them. I asked what happened there. He said they blink, and if you smile they remember you. Then he walked out of the shop, left his bag, left his coffee, didn't even say goodbye that night. I looked it up. Nothing on modern maps, but an archived forestry site from 1974 had a record trail. 3198, a designated Ashpine Hollow Ridge. Closed due to structural instability and ranger fatality. No further details, no records after that naturally. I drove from my apartment in Asheville all the way to a forgotten back road near Parsons. West Virginia, the trailhead was just as strange as I was warned. No sign, just a chain across a gravel lane and a smooth boulder with the same symbol. I had seen tattooed on that man's skin 2 trees, and it was painted in red, not spray paint. Something older, thicker. I took a photo. Wish I hadn't. He crossed under the chain and walked in my boots. Hit dry leaves, and the forest swallowed the sound. No birds, no squirrels, no wind. Was like the woods were holding their breath, waiting nigh. Made camp at the 2-mile mark, right beside a shallow creek. The water was strange, warm and clear. but it had a shimmer that reminded me of oil on pavement. That night, I set up my drone, took some aerial footage of the surrounding tree line. That's when I noticed every single tree in the shot was leaning not just a little, but like they had bowed toward something in the center of the forest. They weren't bent by age or wind, they were bent in obedience. Sound came at 3:12 a.m. I know because I checked my watch after I woke up, gasping, soft, wet, crackling sound, like someone chewing too close to my ear. Only I was alone in the tentai. Froze, listened. The sound was just outside. Something brushing along the fabric of the tentai whispered, "Answer then." I felt something press through the tent wall, not a hand, not a palon, flat shape like a palm. But with too many joints, I held my breath until the sun came up. When I stepped out, there were no footprints, but the grass was damp and every tree nearby had a mark carved down the center of its bark. Long, vertical slash, still wet. I packed up and kept hiking, even though everything in me told me to turn around. Bow, for I found an old trail marker, half buried under dirt. It had been burned, but I could still read the first few letters. Ashpine. Then, at mile 5, I found the stone circular crude shrine with a rusted pendant hanging in the middle. All around the base, tiny animal skulls arranged like petals on a flower. I stepped closer. The pendant started to sway. Even though there was no wind, I turned to leave. And that's when I saw a tree I had passed hours earlier. Same gash down the center, same gnarled branch that looked like a crooked armet was now ahead of me. Again, stopped walking, heart hammering. Then I turned, walked the other way, faster. 10 minutes later, that same tree was in front of me. Again, that was the moment I realized the trail was not in a loop. The trail was circling me. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at that same tree. Adat hadn't moved, of course not. But something in me said that the forest had turned me around. Without turning, May was on the trail, but the trail was not on my side anymore. I turned off my phone. The compass spun in circles. GPS was frozen, and the drone, dead-eye, tried leaving breadcrumbs, not literal, but I started carving shallow slashes into the trees with my knife. Just small markings, 3 horizontal lines. 10 minutes later, the tree I marked was behind me. Again, I hadn't looped, I hadn't turned, but the mark had moved. That night, I didn't sleep. Built a fire big and hot, the way my grandfather taught me when I was young. Flames tall enough to scare anything back, but the woods didn't seem afraid. There was no breeze, and yet the flames flickered like someone was exhaling from the shadows. And then the blinking began. I swear to you, I watched as the trees one by one began to close their bark, creased like eyelids, knotted branches folding inward, sap beading like tears. The whole forest went still, silent, not peaceful, predatory. I stood, clutching the handle of my axe, heart slamming against my ribs. Then I heard my voice from somewhere out in the woods. To me, whispering my own name, but wrong. It was my voice, but stripped of everything human, like someone had heard me speak once and was trying to use it against May. Didn't answer, didn't move, and then something stepped into the clearing. It was tall, thin to thin. Its joints were placed where joints don't belong. The skin on its face was bark, but wet like it had just peeled itself out of the forest. Floret's mouth didn't move when it spoke. My name again, then a laugh, soft like wind over broken glass eye through the exit. Didn't flinch. The blade landed in a tree behind it. When I turned to grab my pack, the creature was already gone. That morning I found the axe head. It was embedded in a tree that wasn't there the night before the tree was. Fresh, still bleeding sap. The bark was smooth except for a single human, eye wide open and looking right at Mayran, not in panic, but with a horrible calm every step. I took the trees moved, not visibly, but their spacing, their angles, always just slightly off. And then I stumbled into a clearing I hadn't seen before. Dead center, there was a cabin, ancient, caved in on one side. A stone chimney, overgrown with moss. The door was open inside. Everything was covered in dust, except the center of the floorway. Someone had drawn a perfect circle with ash inside. The circle a single photograph, faded black and white. It was me younger, maybe 13, standing with my father in front of a trailhead, Ashpine Hollow, 1979, but that's not possible. I wasn't born. Until 1991, I touched the photo and the room went dark, not normal dark. It was like the walls had inhaled all the light in the world. And in that vacuum I heard it again, that voice. My voice, crying now, pleading, asking to be let back in. Stumbled back out of the cabin, but the forest was wrong. Everything was too still. The sky overhead was deep gray, but there was no weather, no sound, no passage of time. I hiked for what felt like hours, but the sun never moved. The shadows never shifted. Eventually, I found a creek again, but it ran uphill. The water moved in reverse, and floating along the surface was a deer skull, fresh, but still moving its jaw, as if trying to speak. That night I didn't make a fire, I didn't unpack. I sat on the ground, arms wrapped, bow around my knees, and listened, because I knew if I heard my voice again and answered, that would be it. Something had been waiting for me long before. I arrived, don't remember falling asleep, but I woke to the sound of roots cracking beneath me, like the earth itself was shifting. The tree behind me had moved closer. I was sure of it, and in the bark was my reflection, not a mirror. Not exactly, but the pattern of the wood knots, grooves, sap lines. They looked like my face, mouth open, eyes wide, frozen. Mid-screamy, tore myself away, ran toward the only direction left, downhill, always downhill, till I tripped over something buried in the dirt. An old boot, rotting, torn open at the Toby side. It a trail map, sealed in plastic. I ripped it open. It was labeled Ashpine Hollow Loop, -1971, and drawn in red ink were names, dozens of them, scattered around the loop like markers. Each name had a red X beside it all, except one. Weighed my name, not crossed out, not yet. I don't know how long I stared at the map. Maybe hours, maybe only seconds. But something about seeing my name not crossed out felt worse than if it had been. Like the forest was still waiting on a decision, still watching. I folded the map slowly, slid it into my pocket, and stood up to keep walking. because what else could I do? I followed the trail knot, the one from before, but one that opened up naturally, a new path. Like the forest had drawn it just for me. The trees on either side leaned, in branches hanging low like they were listening, breathing. Then I saw the markers again, not the ones I'd carved, but others, dozens, deep gouges in the trunks. Sometimes with initials burned in, sometimes with full names etched crudely with knife. I began to realize this wasn't a new trail. It was the old one, the original Ashpine Hollow loop. The one that had been buried beneath years of growth, of silence, of cover-up. Came to a hill at the top. There was a fire watchtower, or what was. Left of it the wood was rotting stairs, half collapsed, but the structure still stood. Like a sentinel, I climbed every step, creaked under my weight, but I kept going inside the watch room. Dust hung thick in the air. But someone had been there recently. There were Polaroids pinned to the wall, hundreds of them, maybe more. Each one showed a different face. Hikers, campers, some smiling, some frozen mid-scream. Eyes wide, mouths twisted, captured just before something went wrong. I searched for mine, half afraid I'd find it, half afraid I wouldn't then. I saw it near the edge, pinned at a crooked angle. It was me standing at the trailhead. Only this photo wasn't old. It was now same clothes, same backpack, same time of day. I'd arrived, only the face was wrong. It looked like me, but the expression wasn't mine. It was stretched tight, unblinking, and the eyes were too wide. Like the forest had taken a guess at what a human looked like, and gotten close, but not close enough. Turned around fast, expecting something behind me, but there was only the window, and beyond it the trees, all of them blinking in sync. One blink, then open, then closed again, like lungs expanding, contracting. The forest was alive and I was inside. Its ribcage ran down the tower, back to the path. But it was gone. The trail had closed, swallowed behind me like a throat. I screamed, not for help, just screamed to be loud, to drown out the silence. That's when I heard the footsteps, not mine, not animal, something, walking deliberate, slow, cracking twigs. With intention I turned. Nothing then, a flicker, just a flicker of bark, shifting shapes, sliding off a tree, peeling back like skin, and there it was, the thing wearing my face. But now it wasn't trying to match my voice, it was using it perfectly. Help. It said, I am lost, I need help, over and over. Same intonation, same panic, like it had recorded MIT. Stepped forward, and as it did, its body distorted, stretched. Its arms bent too far, fingers too long, neck craning sideways with a sharp snap. I backed up, but the forest behind me had shifted. Again every tree I passed was etched with another name. Each one I recognized from the map. All crossed out now, except mine. The thing spoke again. Still my voice, but wrong now. It was smiling. You're almost home, it said, like it was trying to soothe the child. You made it through the loop. Ronnie, don't know how I did, or in what direction, but I ran until my legs screamed, until my lungs felt like they'd burst. Then light the break. In the trees, the edge of the foresty collapsed onto gravel, scraped palms, breathing hard, blinking against sunlight, and there it was, the trailhead, Ashpine Hollow, faded, rotted, covered in moss, but Reland, nailed to it, was a new Polaroid me, staring back from behind the tree line, but now it was crossed out red marker. One single line through the photos, someone had marked me off Simeon, or something had let me go. I got in my car, still running. I don't even remember leaving it that way, and I drove her, didn't stop for gas, didn't check the rearview mirror. Drove until I was 4 states away, until the trees outside my window no longer leaned in to listen. Now I live far from any forest. I sleep with the lights on, and I never, ever look at trees to Longi, 'cause sometimes when I blink, I swear they blink back.